Did Indiana football just make another major addition through the transfer portal?
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Well, thank you so much for being here again. To all my everydayers, thank you so much. Whether you are new here or returning customer, doesn't matter. We appreciate you checking out this free Indiana podcast that we post Monday through Friday. Indiana basketball plays USC coming up tomorrow. Sounds weird for that to be a Big Ten game, doesn't it? We'll talk about that, begin to preview that a little bit later on in the show. Plus, we'll talk about other positions that Indiana football could be going after or should be going after in the transfer portal. But we start the show today with the addition of another player on the defensive side of the football. It's been a major focus for Curt Cignetti and the staff in the transfer portal. You go and get not just another defensive player, you get another corner as well. You fill in a cornerback spot that some people say maybe didn't need to be filled. Maybe there were already enough bodies in there, enough big names for Indiana not to worry about that position. More on that in just a second. Indiana lands the Pittsburgh transfer Ryland Gandy. This is somebody who played a lot of football at Pitt. He played several years. He had a red shirt. He worked his way into the rotation and really just got more playing time as his career went along. And the stats are not going to be the craziest thing in the world, but I think he did his job. I think he held down the fort. He held down his side of the field and did what he was supposed to do. He was somebody that was trusted to be on the field at that important position in big-time moments playing in Power 4 ACC football. Again, Ryland Gandy is the Pittsburgh corner who has committed to be on the Indiana roster for 2025. He played in 29 games during 3 years at Pitt, 13 of those being starts for the Panthers in Pittsburgh. This past season, he started all 13 games for them, so he wasn't a starter until this past year, right? He had 40 tackles, 1 pass breakup, and half tackles for loss. So, again, nothing crazy there, but there's no major big plays against him. Sure, he's given up some because they all do. It's how it goes. But again, he had 40 tackles and a pass breakup. He was a red shirt in 2022. He got 4 games in, got the red shirt. And then in 2023, he had 12 games where he recorded 7 tackles. So again, you bring in somebody who, in my opinion, I think for Indiana in this moment, in this situation, for a guy that visited North Carolina, Michigan, also had offers out of high school from teams like Penn State and Notre Dame and Michigan, I just think this was too good not to take. I think he was somebody that Indiana really liked. We brought him on campus last week. He liked it. We liked him. And I just think this was one where the staff sat down and said, okay, do we necessarily need another cornerback right now? No, not necessarily. But this kid is really, really good. And he brings us a year of eligibility where he can come in, be a competitor, and just add depth to a room that's already really, really good. And I've seen a lot of fans have this concern, even in the short amount of time since Indiana picked up this commitment, is why are we going after players in positions that we don't necessarily need? I totally understand. I totally get it. But let's listen to ourselves for just a second. And the complaints are we're too talented at a position, that Indiana has too much talent at a specific spot, this one being on the defensive side of the football in the cornerback room. That's a great problem to have. That's a great position to be in if you're Indiana. And the fact that we're complaining, and I put that in air quotes, I don't think anybody's actually complaining about Ryland Gandy being a commit. I think it's more of a, oh, maybe we weren't exactly expecting another corner to be added out of the transfer portal. And again, I get where you're coming from. I just think we should be in a spot where we're thankful we have a coaching staff that goes after big time players. You go after depth, and it's always like I compare it to like the NBA draft or the NHL draft or whatever. Like if you have the first, second, third, fourth, fifth pick in the draft, you have to go get the best player available. You may need a center, right? You may need a point guard, or you may need a goalie if you're talking hockey, whatever the case may be, right? A defenseman, a forward, whatever. But when you have one of those top picks, or you have one of those prime opportunities, you have to go get the best players that are there. And I think that's what Indiana's trying to do. No, we're not in competition for some of the biggest of the big, but a guy like Ryland Gandy, I think is a really good player. And again, teams like Michigan wanted this guy. North Carolina with Bill Belichick wanted this guy. And Indiana said, yeah, we want him too. Come on home. We'll take care of you. He's a Georgia native. He played down at Buford High School, which I believe is like a small college. It's one of the biggest schools down there in the South. And so you bring him in. Oh, Ole Miss wanted him too. Forgot about that. Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss wanted him. I'm sure he's upset about that. And so he comes in now as an addition to the cornerback room. And you're probably asking, well, what does the cornerback room look like? Well, I'll be happy to tell you what the corners look like right now. You, of course, lose Sedarius Doss out of eligibility. JoJo Johnson is the outgoing transfer so far. Guys that are returning as of right now. Remember, we still have the spring window where guys could leave, and that seems to be a growing concern for some people. I'm just not ready to commit to that just yet. You bring back the All-American D'Angelo Pons. You have Jameer Johnson. You have Jamari Sharp, Dontre Henderson, and Josh Philliston, okay? You have those guys coming back as of right now in the cornerback room, along with Marion Knighton, the Northern Illinois transfer, who is one of my favorite young transfers so far for this Indiana team, and Ryland Gandy, who is the new transfer from Pitt. You also have 3 freshmen who are stepping into that room as well. So it's pretty stacked in there. There's no doubt about it. You've got some serious talent there. D'Angelo Pons, Jameer Johnson. I think Jamari Sharp can be thrown in there, plus a Marion Knighton, and now Ryland Gandy. Like, you can only have so many of them on the field at one time, but you have depth at that spot, and you have competition at that spot as well. Other than D'Angelo Pons, the other cornerback spot is wide open, I think. And you get to bring all these guys in and say, good luck, have fun, see how it goes. And that's a good problem to have. And I think Ryland Gandy is a perfect addition to this Indiana corner room, to the defense. You bring experience, you bring skill, you bring leadership. And I think the corner room may just be one of the best positions on the entire team for Indiana in 2025. Are there concerns with people leaving out of that room? Very well could be possible. We'll have more on that coming up next. Plus, other positions that Indiana could still go after, or maybe should still go after in the transfer portal. We have that coming up for you next, right here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Game Time. Attending the new 12-team college football playoff games is an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. I remember the excitement of the past playoff games, and heck, even this year's playoff games already were incredible, especially those that were on campus, man. If you, if you had the opportunity to be there in those games, what an awesome opportunity, and moving forward to have that chance to do that with this new look college football playoff. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I've used it for concerts and sporting events. My parents have used it for concerts. I will continue to use it. If you're going to the big city, have a chance to go to some musicals or theater or things like that, Game Time can do all of that for you. Plus, one of my favorite features is their all-in pricing. When you toggle that, it shows your total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. That is why I use the Game Time app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here, making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. If you are one of my returning folks, my everydayers, thank you so much. You guys are growing every single day. That number continues just to climb. So thank you so much for being a part of that. Whether you listen on audio, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, any other platform, or whether you're watching on the YouTube side, I appreciate you and your support. Those of you on audio, I tell you this every day, and I want to make sure it's so. Make sure you're following us on those platforms, you're leaving us those 5-star reviews, and that you have your notifications turned on, because we do post bonus episodes, and this podcast is free, so you may as well get notified every time we post one. That way you can check it out. So have those notifications turned on your audio podcasting platforms. And then for YouTube, my YouTube viewers, like the video, helps it get out there. More Indiana people can find it. Be sure you comment your thoughts on Ryland Gandy, the cornerback room. Are you worried about somebody transferring out? Is this a sign of things to come for Indiana? You tell me. I want to hear your thoughts down below. And then be sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not already. I told you yesterday, I'll give you a live update as I am recording this right now. We have 4,257 subscribers. That's 4,257. Well on our way to 4,300 subscribers. So thank you so much for being a part of that. Well, Indiana adds Ryland Gandy, the Pittsburgh cornerback transfer, into the room. I've told you, I think this will be one of the best, deepest, skilled rooms on the team for Indiana in 2025. But there does seem to be a little concern. People are starting to talk a little bit. They're saying, well, if Indiana went after another guy at that position, are we concerned with somebody transferring? As of right now, I'm saying no. Doesn't mean it can't happen. Doesn't mean it won't happen. Only certain guys would qualify for that come spring with eligibility and things like that. The only name I can think of would be Jameer Johnson. But I haven't heard any legitimate smoke on him wanting to get out or leave or whatever. I think that would really just come down to what the battle looks like, what the position looks like, what the playing time looks like. And you know what? If it comes down to that point where he's not getting significant time and he needs to go or wants to go, then by all means have at it. That's kind of the era that we're in. But I have not heard any legitimate concern with a transfer out in the corner room, another one, I should say, as of right now. I think Gandy was just, you couldn't pass up on him, is what I was told and kind of what I feel about him. And so you start looking at other positions that Indiana could still focus on in the portal. And I think it's the counterpart position to the corners is the safeties, right? You have a heavy room right now on one side, and your safeties, while you've got some good names, you don't have near the amount of bodies, right? Here's sort of an update on what's going on there, right? You've lost 3 to eligibility. You've also lost 2 to the transfer portal with McDaniel and DJ Warnell. You've got guys who are coming back as of now, Amari Farrell, Bryson Bonds, and Jaja Boyd. You bring in Louis Moore, right? The Ole Miss transfer. And there were some concerns about whether he was going to stick around or go somewhere else. He signed with Indiana. So we're good there. No concern there. The Ole Miss safety has committed and signed with Indiana. Really like that one, by the way. You're bringing in an SEC level safety. Yeah, we'll take it. And then you bring in Byron Baldwin and Garrett Reese as freshmen. So if you're keeping track at home, right, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 2 of those are freshmen, and 1 of those is a transfer. So just 3 returning guys in the safeties room. Yeah, I think there is room to go and add to that room. You see what I'm saying? I think the safeties is still one where you could go get one. And who that is, I mean, there's a couple of names, but nothing concrete. So that's a position I think Indiana really needs to focus on. Up until just a couple of days ago, the offensive line was a big concern, right? We've been asking about when Indiana was going to add offensive linemen, when they were going to add offensive linemen, when they were going to add offensive linemen. And the addition of Michalski from Ohio State and Benson from Colorado, who, of course, was a 3-year player at Indiana, I still believe you added 2 starters there. I really, really do. And I think because of Michalski's size and the fact that he was at Ohio State, no, he didn't really crack the rotation. But as I said on yesterday's show, kind of reacting to all of this, it's a hard thing to do. And we have to be able to admit to ourselves that Ohio State's offensive line is at a different spot than Indiana's offensive line. We saw it in person up front for 4 quarters. They are legit. They're playing the best football in the country right now as a team, as Ohio State. Like, their offensive line is unbelievable. So you bring I'm not going to call him a reject. I've seen some people call him that, and I just don't think that's fair to Michalski at all. It's not nice, but it's not fair at all. I mean, he's somebody who was a 4-star out of high school who got recruited to play at Ohio State, just couldn't ever get legitimate action other than some special teams rotations. By all means, come to Indiana. We'll use you, man. You're big, you're strong, you're fast. Let's go. We'll put you on our offensive line right now. And I think he's going to be a huge piece, and I think he can move around. I also think Benson falls into that category as well. I had a good discussion about that yesterday, where this is somebody who has comfortably played 3 separate spots on the line. I think could play all 4 in terms of the 2 guard spots and the 2 tackle spots. And that's just a luxury, if you will, for Indiana, that you have somebody like Benson, who, yes, has been here before, and a lot has changed, right? A lot has changed already since he left and has come back, and a lot has changed since his freshman year to what he's going to be seeing in his final year at Indiana. But you bring him in and you have that luxury of saying, okay, let's try you here for now. No, you're good, but we have somebody struggling on the left tackle spot, so let's move you over there and see how that works. Well, you're doing okay, but we really think you might be better at right guard. See what I'm saying here? You have the option to do that with Benson. And then you bring in Michalski. He'll play where you want him to. You also have a lot of guys returning. You bring in 3 freshmen. The offensive line has gotten better. Is it where it needs to be? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see on that. We're going to have to wait and see. But overall, I think you could still go get another tight end. There's been a lot of buzz around that, right? You still bring in Michalski, the Wisconsin transfer, at tight end. I'm cool if you go get another one. Tulane, the Bauman kid, not happening. You got to go get somebody else now, I think. And you bring in just another experience. You cannot have enough. Until you hit your limit in the roster spots, you can't have enough depth at tight end or any of these positions. I think tight end could be a spot that you go after, right? You've brought in a lot of good receivers. You brought Mekhi Jackson. You brought in Tyler Morris. You bring back Surratt, Cooper, EJ Williams, and Charlie Becker too. But the fact that you bring back Surratt, Cooper, and Williams, that's massive for Indiana's receiver room. So to kind of put a bow on all this, I would say tight end, offensive line if you can, and go get a safety. If you do that, I think Indiana's in a really good spot. And I know people have been worried about the rankings, right, where places like 247 and On3 and things like that have a team ranking for Indiana's transfer portal. Don't worry about it. That's what I'm going to tell you. Do not worry about it, because Indiana's doing something that's very, very important that I think a lot of teams lose focus on when it comes to the transfer portal. Indiana is filling its needs. Indiana is figuring out, and they looked at the roster and they said, here's where we have gaps. Here's where we have holes. This is where we need to add depth, starters, whatever. And Indiana has done that. They've added a quarterback. They've added a running back. We've added receivers. We've added offensive linemen. We've gotten corners. We still need a safety. We still, another one, of course. You went and got defensive linemen. You've got the edge. You've got special teams guys. Like, you filled the spots that you needed to fill. And that's so important. Yes, you want to get the big 5-star, highest rated Eric Singleton Juniors of the world. Yes, you want to get those players. But you also have to fill in the spots that you need with high-level players. And think about this. Look, I'm just going to read you some of the schools that Indiana's bringing in from. Ole Miss, Pitt, right? You bring in from Western Kentucky, Ohio State, Colorado, Wisconsin, Michigan, Maryland, Cal, You're bringing in big name guys. Sure, you've got Texas States and Old Dominions and Appalachian States on there too, but you're seeing the transition of Indiana beginning to bring in Power 4 big name players from big name schools. And that's what Indiana needs to do. This is a slow process. This is years in the making here. But I believe that Indiana's roster for 2025 has gotten better based off their additions in the transfer portal. I just think that's where it is. I think it's a fact. And I'm excited to see what they do the rest of the way, excited to see what the spring looks like, and excited to see what the finalized roster for 2025 does end up looking like for Indiana football. All right, coming up, final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. We'll start taking a little sneak peek as Indiana basketball host USC for a Big Ten matchup at Assembly Hall coming up on Wednesday. We'll look at that right after this on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same game parlays, and so much more. The matchups are incredible. You've got Chargers, Texans. You've got Packers, Eagles. You've got Steelers, Ravens. I mean, how awesome is that? You've got Broncos and Bills. Really, really good games. You've got Commanders and Bucks. I mean, great games from Saturday, Sunday, Monday for the NFL playoffs. And you can make it even more exciting if you get to FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Final segment on Locked On Hoosiers. Again, appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. Be sure that you are checking out our other Locked On College episodes and our Locked On College family of podcasts, whether it's Locked On College Basketball, your daily podcast on all things college basketball, Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on college football, Locked On Big Ten with Craig Sheeman, IU grad. Be sure you check that out. It's a podcast every single day about the Big Ten Conference. So there's no reason to not get you through your workday with tons of Locked On podcast episodes that are all free to you Monday through Friday. So be sure that you're checking those out. All right, Indiana basketball is back in action on Wednesday evening inside of Assembly Hall before the Hoosiers head back out on the road. And we're hosting USC in a Big Ten matchup. Still not used to that. Still not really hitting the right spots for me. It's not, still doesn't make sense for that to be a Big Ten matchup, but that's okay, right? Indiana, 3-1 in conference play. We're 12-3 overall. You look at USC, 9-5 overall, just 1-2 in conference play. We'll have more on this tomorrow, but wanted to get a little sneak peek in here at the end of the show. USC's losses, they lost to Cal by 5, lost to St. Mary's by a lot, 71-36. Yikes. They lost to New Mexico by 10. Not a great loss. Lost to Oregon by 8, which is considered a good loss. I don't like that term, but it is, because Oregon's playing pretty good basketball. Yes, they got blasted the other night by Illinois, but Oregon's still a really good basketball team. Then they bounced back. They beat Washington on the road, 85-61. I don't know if that says more about USC or if that says more about Washington. What's their updated record? Washington is... yeah, they're not good. They lost to USC, UCLA, Illinois. They did beat Maryland, so there you go. Washington's 1-3 in Big Ten play, so I guess that win for USC says a little bit more about Washington than it does USC. Trojans, though, coming off a loss against Michigan, 85-74. That was at home. Shout out to Michigan for going across the country and getting that win. Don't look now. But Michigan, they're 3-0 in conference play. They beat Wisconsin on the road, Iowa at home, and just beat USC on the road. They'll back that up with a road game at UCLA coming up on Tuesday, coming up today, actually. So don't look now. Michigan playing pretty good basketball, but USC coming off a loss. So they're at home. They're having to travel across the country to come and play in Bloomington. I still don't think we have seen the full effects of that. of this new look Big Ten, new look conferences all over the country, where you've got California flying to play North Carolina in volleyball on a Wednesday night. That's absurd to me. The fact that USC is traveling to Bloomington, they just played a game. When was this game against Michigan? This game was played on January 4th. Was that Sunday or was that Saturday? I believe that was Saturday. Hold on. Let me pull up the calendar. Saturday. Yeah. So they played Saturday. They get 2 days off, and then they have to fly back out to Indiana to play a basketball game before then, after they play Indiana, then they travel to Illinois, then they go back home for Iowa. Like, they're going all over the place. And my point here is I don't think we've seen the full effects yet of these major travel changes that we've seen across the country in college athletics, where you have teams legitimately going across the country, taking 2 weeks on trips before they come back. It can't be healthy. It can't be a good thing long term. And I think you're going to see a decline in results in the sport. I think you'll see a decline in the results in the classroom because they're technically still student athletes. I don't think they will be for long, but they are for now. And I think just in mental, physical health, I mean, it can't be good to be traveling this much and competing at this high of a level. Regardless, USC does come to Bloomington to take on Indiana. They're coming off, again, an 85-74 loss to Michigan, where your Hoosiers are coming off a nice big win over Penn State at the Palestra, 77-71. Don't expect Malik Reneau to play in this game. Mike Woodson said he's not going to return anytime soon. So Indiana's going to have to play some of those different lineups that we saw against the Nittany Lions, where Umar Ballo's your lone big man. You probably will have a starting five of, probably Ballo, Goody, Mbako, Galloway, and Rice. I mean, that's a pretty solid starting five. I mean, Cannon Carlisle, he can't be in that starting rotation right now. He can't. You need him off the bench. You need him to have a little bit of confidence, get some easy shots. He needs to get fouled, man. Get fouled and step up to the free throw line and see if you can knock some of those down and get your confidence back if you're Cannon Carlisle. But that lineup will allow you to, again, spread the floor and let Umar Ballo go to work. Man, some of those turnaround floaters from 4 to 5, 6 feet he had on Sunday against Penn State, those were pure. Those were really, really good. And they're shots that he wasn't able to get before because the lane was so packed because of Malik Reneau and the extra defender down there. You can also continue to run some of those smaller lineups as well that we saw with, Anthony Leal out there. Langdon Hatton was out there. I know he's not smaller, but you get where I'm going here. Some of the different lineups that we saw. And Indiana has a chance to play different looking rotations. And I think I said this on Sunday, so if I did, I'm sorry for repeating it, but I do want to say this again. I think I did. I don't want anybody to get hurt, especially one of your major players like Malik Reneau. He's still your leading scorer on the team, so if you don't agree that he's a major player, he's a leading scorer on the team, okay? As much as I don't want to see anybody get hurt, especially somebody like that, his injury has forced Mike Woodson, who we know does not like to change, who we know does not want to adjust and adapt and be different than what he knows. This injury has forced him to do that. And it worked against Penn State. It very well could work against USC and Illinois and Ohio State and Iowa, the teams that you have coming up on your schedule. It very well could work. And it's forced Mike Woodson and this staff to change a little bit. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I want Malik Reneau to get healthy. I want him to come back as quick as possible. But this isn't the worst thing in the world for Indiana to have to play different lineups. And you're going to see some of those coming up again on Wednesday when the Hoosiers host USC. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Man, a lot of stuff we covered on the show today. Be sure, again, if you are watching on YouTube, to like this video, your comments down below on the transfers for Indiana football, the game coming up tomorrow for basketball against USC, and be sure you subscribe to the channel as well. For all my audio listeners, have those notifications turned on. Leave us a 5-star review. That helps us out a lot as well. And be sure to come back tomorrow, okay? Because this show's free every single day, Monday through Friday. Until then, Hoosier fans, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.